Chapter 24, The Garden of Eden. Having revealed the painful situation in which the universe found itself, the Eternal, in a solemn gesture, showed them two imposing trees laden with large fruits. Rising from the two banks of the river that sprang from the throne, the tree on the right was revealed by the Lord as the tree of life, the monument of the kingdom of light. The river that ran between the trees wound its way through the garden, then eventually split into four rivers, namely the Pishon, the Gihon, the Hiddekel, and the Euphrates. In apocryphal documents, these rivers are each associated with one of these different life-giving sources: water, oil, milk, and honey. All of these are symbols of Heavenly Mother. This massive spring was the lifeblood of all living things. As long as they were in the garden, they had access to the tree of life and the living water from the fountain, which enabled Heavenly Mother to feed and nourish them. Without access to the tree of life, the bodies of Adam and Eve would eventually return to the dust from which they were made. The tree on the other side was revealed as the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, a symbol of rebellion. Apocryphal sources most often indicate that the tree of life was an olive tree, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil was a fig tree. The symbolism of these trees is remarkable to contemplate. By eating the fruit of the tree of life, man would manifest his submission to the Creator, who is the source of life and light. Eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil would give the enemy dominion over Zion, where the inevitable result of this course would be death, not only for man, but for all creation. After contemplating the two trees, Adam bowed himself before the Creator and said, "Only you are worthy to reign over the universe. For by your wisdom, love, and power, all things have been created and continue to exist." Adam and Eve's life in Eden was not idle. Every day, they learned a new life skill straight from the master teachers. They learned to till the ground, take care of the animals, which plants had medicinal purposes, and the order of the sun, the moon, and the stars. Their occupation was not burdensome. Quite the contrary, it was pleasant and invigorating. The Creator had indicated work as a source of benefit for man. During this period, it was common for the young couple to receive visits from celestial beings. The curious visitors always had news to tell and questions to ask. Adam and Eve asked the visitors to teach them the harmonious celestial songs. They were delighted to join their voices with the angelic choir. They spent a lot of time listening to angels talk about the wonders of the kingdom of light. It was through these visitations that Adam and Eve began to understand more deeply the nature of Lucifer's rebellion and its eternal consequences. After the completion of 7 years exactly, on the second month, on the 17th day of the month, the serpent came. Lucifer saw that Adam and Eve were joyful in paradise and was smitten sorely with jealousy. He became filled with wrath. He and his followers witnessed with horror the new life of Adam and Eve. God had turned the earthly kingdom over to them, overturning the strong accusations they had brought against his divine government. Considering the state of their sad condition, it filled them with anger and frustration. They were humiliated as they watched their plans of rebellion dissipate before the Creator's plans. If at all possible, they wished to fill the Sabbath with darkness and thus erase all hope of victory from the minds of the subjects of the Eternal. Satan and his hosts understood that they had only one chance to defy the Eternal. It was on the heights of Zion, right in the middle of the Garden of Eden, at the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Fueled by the prospect of conquest, Lucifer sought to formulate a plan. He concluded that deception would be his powerful weapon. Had he not succeeded in dominating a third of the heavenly armies? All he had to do was wait for an opportune moment. Then he would lay his ambush. Aware of the enemy's terrible intentions, God summoned his angels and, with sadness, revealed to them the imminent danger looming over the universe. Lucifer was going to lay an ambush by tempting Adam and Eve to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Faced with this revelation, the sons of light were fearful, for they knew Satan's formidable ease in ensnaring innocent creatures and binding them in his nets of death. Through a solemn council, they decided to urgently send messengers to warn Adam and Eve of the great danger. 2 mighty angels were tasked with this decisive mission. Immediately, they passed out of the gates of heaven. Moments later, they entered the tunnel of the Orion constellation. From here, they could barely make out the faint blue planet where the fate of the universe would be determined. Meanwhile, in Eden, the young couple continued their innocent activities, enjoying the pleasures of a happy life. They were far from thinking that at this moment, all the sons of light were tensely reflecting on their threatened future. Suddenly, they saw in the clear sky the sign of the approaching celestial visitors. They raised their arms in joyful greeting. However, Adam and Eve were surprised to see anxiety instead of joy on the faces of their visitors. This was their first encounter with this emotion. In an attempt to cheer them up, they began telling them about the discoveries they had made in Eden. But the messengers did not have time. As on other occasions, they interrupted and said to them that Lucifer was planning to get them to eat from the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. If they listened and succumbed to temptation, they would drag all of creation with them into the abyss of eternal chaos. They were instructed to stand firm against the enemy's temptations and reminded that the kingdom had been entrusted to them. They were responsible for living a life of fidelity to honor the one who, out of love, had allowed himself to be stripped of his throne so he could host mankind. But all this depended entirely on how humans conducted themselves in the face of the enemy, who would do everything to take the kingdom from them. Adam and Eve were afraid to know Satan's plans, but they were comforted to learn that he could not force them to eat the forbidden fruit. If he tried to intimidate them with his power, all the troops of the Eternal would come to their aid. The messengers of light concluded their mission by recommending that the couple remain vigilant, constant vigilance, as Mad-Eye Moody would say. They should not separate from each other, not even for a moment, for only together could they resist being seduced. This is a familiar commandment for all young missionaries, who are the adversary's prime targets today. Grateful for the warning, they joined their voices in a song of promise. Encouraged, the two messengers returned to the bosom of heavenly paradise, where they eagerly awaited the long-awaited triumph. Lucifer had witnessed these messengers approaching Eden. He heard their song, promising eternal victory. This song aroused envy and hatred to the point where he could no longer contain himself. He told his followers that he would soon silence those irritating voices. He vowed to do everything in his power to turn human praises into blasphemies against the Creator. The rebel hosts were curious to know their leader's plans, but he warned them that they had to wait until everything was decided once and for all. If Adam or Eve listened to his voice and ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, he would be victorious. He supposed this would allow him to forever possess dominion over the universe. Ever since the departure of the angels, an expression of fear could now be seen on the faces of Adam and Eve. They remained silent, respectfully meditating on the enormous responsibility of their mission. They thought of the gravity of the imminent trial that would seal their fate and that of all creation. Encouraged by the prospect of victory, they joined their voices in a song expressing the joy of the long-awaited triumph. This melody banished from their minds any fear of defeat. They ran joyfully through the green meadows, accompanied by the animals. Feeling safe, they dropped their guard and relaxed the rules they were instructed to keep. Before long, they had forgotten the danger of a possible ambush.